What if the peace you're searching for can only be found when you stop searching? Hello. Good evening. Or maybe it's already late at night where you are. Welcome to the Still Point. If you're new here, thank you for finding us. And if you subscribed, you're part of a quiet community now. People who think, who question, who seek. Sometimes I wonder about the lives on the other side of this screen. The cities, the small towns, the different corners of the world where you might be listening. The stories that brought you here. If you ever feel moved, the comments section is there. A quiet place to leave a thought, a moment, a trace of where you are. This is your refuge. For the next hour, the noise stops. The scrolling ends. You don't have to do anything. Just be here. You're safe. Let's begin. You have everything. Or so it seems. You've followed all the right paths. Done all the right things. You've learned what you were supposed to learn. Achieved what you were supposed to achieve. Built the life you were supposed to build. And yet there's this feeling, this hollow feeling, this sense that despite all the knowledge you've accumulated, all the accomplishments you've gathered, all the roles you've mastered, something essential is missing. Something true, something real, something that all your learning and doing and achieving has somehow completely bypassed. You are like Siddhartha at the beginning of Hermann Hesse's novel. Young, privileged, brilliant. Everyone admires you. Everyone respects you. You've mastered the teachings. You can recite the wisdom. You understand the concepts. But understanding concepts is not the same as understanding life. Knowing about the river is not the same as being in the river. Reading about enlightenment is not the same as being awake. And you know this. Deep down, you know this. Which is why there's this restlessness in you. This dissatisfaction. This sense that you're living someone else's life, following someone else's path, pursuing someone else's idea of what you should be. Hesse understood this feeling intimately. He spent his life exploring it, wrestling with it, writing about it. He knew what it was to have all the advantages, education, talent, recognition, and still feel fundamentally lost. Still feel like you're wearing a mask. Still feel like the person everyone sees is not the person you actually are. In Siddhartha, he tells the story of a young man who has to leave everything behind to find what's real. Who has to abandon the comfortable path of inherited wisdom to discover his own truth. Who has to lose himself completely before he can find himself truly. And this is your story too. Not literally, you don't have to leave your home and wander as an ascetic. But internally, spiritually, you are at the same threshold Siddhartha stood at. The threshold between living according to what you've been taught and living according to what you actually know. Between following the path others have laid out for you and finding your own path. Between knowledge and understanding. Between concept and experience. Between the idea of truth and truth itself. Look at your life right now. Really look at it. How much of what you do, what you think, what you believe, how much of it is actually yours? How much did you choose because it resonated with something deep inside you? And how much did you choose because it's what you were supposed to choose? What you were taught to value? What would make others proud or impressed or satisfied? Siddhartha was the pride of his community, the brightest student, the most promising young man. Everyone expected great things from him. He was on track to become a respected teacher, a spiritual leader, someone who would carry on the traditions and wisdom of his fathers. And that's exactly what made him feel empty, because he realized that he was becoming a perfect vessel for other people's truths, a flawless container for inherited wisdom. But he had no truth of his own, no direct experience, no authentic knowing, just borrowed knowledge, just second-hand wisdom, just beliefs he accepted without ever truly questioning or experiencing them. He could speak beautifully about the nature of reality, about the path to enlightenment, about the dissolution of self. But these were just words, just concepts, just ideas floating in his head, disconnected from any lived experience. And he felt in his bones that this was not enough, that you cannot think your way to truth. You cannot study your way to awakening. You cannot become enlightened by mastering the right concepts. You have to live it. You have to experience it. You have to descend from the high place of abstract knowledge into the messy, difficult, real world of actual experience. And this is terrifying, because the high place is safe. The world of concepts and beliefs and inherited wisdom, it's comfortable up there. You know the rules. You know what's expected. You know how to succeed. You've built your entire identity around being good at this, around mastering the teachings, around being the person who understands. But Siddhartha realized something crucial. Understanding the map is not the same as walking the territory. Knowing the words for enlightenment is not the same as being enlightened. And no amount of study, no amount of intellectual mastery, no amount of conceptual understanding can substitute for direct experience. So he left. He walked away from everything that had defined him, from the comfortable world of inherited wisdom, from the expectations of his family and community, from the identity he'd built as the brilliant student, the promising young teacher. He left it all behind and descended into the unknown. This is the descent, not a physical journey, though it can be, but an internal journey, a letting go, a release of all the comfortable certainties, all the borrowed truths, all the second-hand wisdom that you've been carrying like a shield between yourself and reality. And you're standing at this threshold now. You can feel it. The restlessness, the dissatisfaction, the growing awareness that something is missing. That despite all your knowledge, all your achievements, all your understanding, you haven't actually touched the real thing. You've been living in the world of ideas about life rather than in life itself. This awareness is uncomfortable. It threatens everything you've built. Your identity as someone who knows. Your status as someone who understands. Your comfortable position in the world of inherited wisdom and accepted truths. But it's also the beginning of something real. Something true. Something that's actually yours rather than borrowed. Because you cannot find your own truth until you're willing to let go of other people's truths. You cannot discover your own path until you're willing to step off the well-worn path everyone else is following. You cannot wake up until you're willing to admit that you've been asleep. Siddhartha's first act of awakening was recognizing that he was asleep, that all his knowledge was a kind of sleep, that understanding concepts about enlightenment while remaining unenlightened was a particularly subtle form of unconsciousness. He was dreaming that he was awake, believing that because he could think and speak about truth, he possessed truth. But truth is not a possession. Truth is not something you can accumulate like knowledge. Truth is not a concept you can master intellectually. Truth is an experience, a living reality, something you must encounter directly without the buffer of concepts and beliefs and second-hand wisdom. And to encounter it, you have to descend. You have to leave the safe high place of abstract knowledge. You have to let go of the comfortable identity of being someone who understands. You have to become willing to not know, to be lost, to be uncertain, to be a beginner again. This is what Hesse calls the journey inward and downward. Not downward in the sense of degradation, but downward in the sense of depth, of moving from the surface to the depths, from the shallow world of concepts to the deep world of experience, from the intellectual understanding of truth to the visceral, embodied, lived encounter with truth. And this journey is not comfortable. Siddhartha discovered this quickly. When he left his comfortable home, when he abandoned his inherited wisdom, when he stepped off the well-worn path, he didn't immediately find enlightenment. He found confusion, difficulty, suffering. He had to learn through experience what no amount of study could have taught him. He became an ascetic, practicing extreme self-denial. He learned to fast until his body was skeletal, to meditate until he could barely distinguish between himself and his surroundings, to push himself to the very edge of what a human body and mind can endure. And what did he learn? That this too was not the path. That extreme self-denial was just another form of the same error, trying to force yourself into someone else's idea of what enlightenment should look like. Trying to achieve truth through discipline and technique rather than through direct experience and authentic living. So he left the ascetics too, left another set of teachings, another inherited path, another collection of beliefs about how one should live and what one should do to find truth. And this is when the real descent began, because now he had nothing, no teachings to follow, no path to walk, no inherited wisdom to guide him. He was completely alone with his own experience, completely responsible for finding his own truth, completely without the comfortable buffer of authority and tradition and accepted knowledge. This is the most terrifying moment. The moment when you realize that no one can give you the truth. That no teaching, no matter how profound, can substitute for your own direct experience. That you must find your own way, make your own mistakes, discover your own truth through your own living. But it's also the most liberating moment. Because when you stop looking for truth in books and teachings and inherited wisdom, when you stop trying to become what others think you should be, when you descend from the high place of abstract knowledge into the messy reality of actual living, that's when real learning becomes possible. That's when genuine transformation can occur. That's when you can begin to discover who you actually are rather than who you've been told you should be. Siddhartha descended into the world, into the realm of the senses, of pleasure, of business, of ordinary human life. He became a merchant, a lover, a gambler. He experienced wealth and pleasure and all the things his spiritual training had taught him to transcend. And for a time, he lost himself completely in this world. He forgot his spiritual seeking. He forgot his quest for truth. He became absorbed in the pleasures and pains, the successes and failures, the joys and sorrows of ordinary human existence. Was this a mistake? A detour? a falling away from the path? The conventional spiritual teachings would say yes. They would say he was deluded, that he was caught in Maya, that he was wasting his time in the world of illusion when he should have stayed on the pure spiritual path. But Hesse suggests something different, something more radical. He suggests that Siddhartha's descent into the world, his immersion in ordinary life, his experience of pleasure and pain and success and failure, all of this was necessary. Not a detour from the path, but the path itself. Not a falling away from truth, but a falling into truth. Not a mistake, but an essential part of the journey. Because you cannot transcend what you have not experienced. You cannot go beyond the world if you've only learned about the world intellectually. You cannot achieve detachment if you've never been attached. You cannot find peace beyond desire if you've never fully experienced desire. The spiritual teachings Siddhartha learned in his youth were true, but they were true as concepts, as ideas, as intellectual understanding. They were not yet true as lived experience, as embodied wisdom, as authentic knowing. And the only way to transform conceptual truth into lived truth is through experience, through descent, through immersion, through allowing yourself to be fully in life rather than standing above it with your concepts and beliefs and inherited wisdom. This is what you're being invited into now. Not to abandon everything and become a wandering ascetic or a merchant or a gambler, but to recognize that there's a difference between knowing about life and knowing life, between understanding concepts about truth and experiencing truth directly, between living according to what you've been taught and living according to what you actually know in your bones, in your blood, in your direct experience. The descent is scary because it means letting go of certainty. It means releasing your grip on the comfortable identity of being someone who knows, someone who understands, someone who has figured it out. It means becoming willing to be lost, to be uncertain, to be a beginner, to not know. But it's also an invitation to something real, something authentic, something that's actually yours rather than borrowed from books and teachers and traditions. Hesse wrote Siddhartha during a period of profound personal crisis. His life was falling apart. His marriage was failing. His mental health was fragile. The certainties he built his life on were collapsing. And in the midst of this crisis, this descent, this falling apart, he discovered something. He discovered that the falling apart was not failure. It was transformation. The collapse of his old certainties was not disaster. It was opportunity. The loss of his comfortable identity was not the end. It was the beginning of something more real, more authentic, more true. And he wrote Siddhartha as a gift to others going through the same process, as a map for those who feel that restlessness, that dissatisfaction, that sense that despite all their knowledge and achievements, something essential is missing. The message is simple but radical. You cannot think your way to truth. You have to live your way to truth. You cannot study yourself into enlightenment. You have to experience yourself into enlightenment. And that experience requires descent, requires letting go, requires releasing your grip on inherited wisdom and second-hand knowledge and comfortable certainties. It requires becoming willing to be lost so that you can find your own way, becoming willing to not know so that you can discover your own knowing, becoming willing to descend from the high place of abstract understanding into the depths of direct experience. Tonight, as you rest, you stand at this threshold, between the old way and the new way, between inherited wisdom and authentic experience. between living according to what you've been taught and living according to what you actually know. You don't have to make any dramatic changes. You don't have to abandon everything and wander off into the unknown. But you do have to become willing to question what you've accepted without questioning, willing to let go of certainties that no longer serve you, willing to descend from the safe high place into the uncertain depths, willing to admit that you don't know, that despite all your learning and understanding, you haven't actually touched the real thing yet, that you've been living in the world of ideas about life rather than in life itself. This admission is not failure. It's the beginning of wisdom, real wisdom, not the borrowed wisdom of books and teachings, but the lived wisdom that comes from direct experience, from descent, from immersion, from being fully in life rather than floating above it with your concepts. Siddhartha's journey was long. It took him through many phases, many experiences, many mistakes and discoveries. But it all began with this first step, this recognition, this willingness to let go of what he'd been taught in order to discover what he actually knew. And your journey begins here too, tonight, in this moment, with this recognition that something is missing, that despite all your knowledge, all your understanding, all your achievements, you haven't yet touched the real thing. But you can. You will. If you're willing to descend. If you're willing to let go. If you're willing to move from the world of concepts into the world of experience. Rest now in this threshold. Rest in this recognition. Rest in this space between what you've been taught and what you're beginning to discover for yourself. The descent has begun, not as dramatic action, but as quiet recognition, as gentle letting go, as the first soft steps into the unknown. And Siddhartha walks beside you, not as a teacher with answers, but as a companion who understands, who has walked this path, who knows what it is to leave certainty behind in search of truth. Rest. Let go. Descend. The journey inward and downward has begun. You have descended. You have left the high place of inherited wisdom, of second-hand knowledge, of comfortable certainties. And now you find yourself here, in the world. Not the world as you learned about it in books and teachings, but the actual world. The living, breathing, messy, beautiful, terrible world of direct experience. This is where Siddhartha found himself after leaving his father's house, after abandoning the teachings of the Brahmins. Standing at the edge of the forest, looking out at a world he knew nothing about. A world his education had never prepared him for. A world that couldn't be understood through concepts and philosophies, but only through immersion, through participation, through living. And the first thing he encountered was the river that would become central to his entire journey. The river that knew everything, that held all wisdom, but not the kind of wisdom that could be written in books or taught in temples. A different kind of wisdom. The wisdom of flowing, of being, of constant change and eternal presence all at once. Listen. Can you hear it? The river. Not literally, though if you listen deeply enough, you might hear the river of your own blood, your own breath, your own life flowing through you. But the river as metaphor, as teaching, as the first great lesson in the difference between knowing about something and knowing something directly. Siddhartha stood by the river and listened. And what did he hear? Not words, not concepts, not teachings that could be translated into language and written down. He heard the river being river, water flowing over stones, currents swirling and eddying, the surface catching light while the depths remained dark and mysterious, the sound of everything moving and yet the river itself somehow staying the same. This is the paradox that cannot be understood intellectually. The river is always changing. Every drop of water is different from the last. Every moment brings new currents, new flows, new configurations. And yet the river remains the river. Same banks, same path, same essential riverness despite the constant flux of its contents. How can something be eternally changing and eternally the same? How can there be such radical impermanence in every detail and such profound permanence in the whole? The intellect stumbles over this, tries to resolve it, tries to make it make sense according to logic. But the river doesn't care about logic. The river just flows, just is, just demonstrates this impossible paradox through its very being, through its constant flowing presence. And Siddhartha, standing there, learned something he could never have learned from books. He learned by listening, by being present, by allowing the river to teach him not through words but through its existence. This was his first immersion into the wisdom of direct experience. But he couldn't stay by the river forever. Not yet. He wasn't ready yet to hear all that the river had to teach. He was still too full of seeking, too full of the idea that wisdom was something to be found, something to be achieved, something distant that he had to journey toward. So he left the river and continued his descent, deeper into experience, deeper into the world. He joined a group of ascetics, the Samamas, who practiced extreme self-denial, who believed that enlightenment came through the mortification of the flesh, through the transcendence of all bodily desires, through the complete conquest of the self. And Siddhartha threw himself into this practice with the same intensity he had brought to his earlier studies. He learned to fast until his body was skeletal, to meditate until he could separate his consciousness from his physical sensations, to endure heat and cold and pain without flinching, to become, as the Samamas taught, empty of self, free of desire, detached from the world. He became very good at this. Brilliant, even. He could endure longer than the other Samamas, could fast more severely, could achieve deeper states of meditation. By all the measures the Samamas used, he was succeeding. He was mastering the path. He was approaching enlightenment. But something was wrong, something fundamental. Because even as he achieved these impressive feats of self-denial, even as he became more and more skilled at separating himself from his body and his desires, he felt no closer to truth, no closer to the enlightenment he sought. He was just becoming very good at another set of techniques, very skilled at another system of beliefs. But it was still second-hand, still borrowed, still not his own direct knowing. One day he said to his friend Govinda, "What is meditation? What is abandonment of the body? What is fasting? What is holding a breath? It is a flight from the self. It is a temporary escape from the torment of self. But it is not a path to true enlightenment. The drunkard achieves the same escape when he drinks his rice wine. He too flees from himself. He too finds temporary relief from being who he is. But when he wakes, he is still himself. And when I wake from my meditation, I am still myself. Nothing has fundamentally changed. This was a radical realization, because the Samamas believed they were on the highest path, the purest path, the path that led most directly to enlightenment. And here was Siddhartha suggesting that their extreme practices were just another form of avoidance, another way of trying to escape from life rather than understanding it, another borrowed wisdom that promised transformation but delivered only temporary relief. So he left the Samamas too, left another set of teachings, another inherited path, and descended even deeper, not into more extreme practices, but into the opposite, into the world of the senses, into pleasure, into ordinary human life. This is where Hesse's telling of the story becomes most radical, most challenging to conventional spiritual teaching, because Siddhartha doesn't go from the ascetics to enlightenment. He goes from the ascetics to becoming a merchant, a businessman, a lover, a gambler. He enters fully into the world of material pleasure, of sensual enjoyment, of ordinary worldly success. He meets Kamala, a courtesan, and learns the art of love. Not spiritual love, not transcendent love, but physical, sensual, passionate love. The love of bodies and pleasure and desire fully indulged rather than denied. He meets Kamaswami, a merchant, and learns the art of business, of buying and selling, of accumulating wealth, of navigating the world of commerce and competition and material success. And for years, many years, Siddhartha immerses himself completely in this world. He becomes wealthy, successful, skilled in pleasure. He owns fine clothes, lives in a beautiful house, eats rich food, drinks fine wine. He masters the game of dice. He takes lovers. He becomes everything his spiritual training told him to transcend. Was this a mistake? A detour? A falling away from the path? Every spiritual tradition would say yes. They would say he was deluded, lost, caught in Maya, the illusion of the material world, wasting precious years in the pursuit of empty pleasures when he should have stayed on the pure spiritual path. But Hesse suggests something different, something profound. He suggests that Siddhartha's immersion in the world of pleasure and business and ordinary life was not a detour from his path. It was his path. It was a necessary stage, a crucial experience, something he had to live through fully in order to understand what the ascetics had only theorized about. Because you cannot truly transcend what you have never truly experienced. You cannot genuinely let go of desire if you have only suppressed desire. You cannot find real detachment if you have only practiced forced detachment. You cannot understand the emptiness of worldly pleasure if you have only read about the emptiness of worldly pleasure. You have to taste it, fully, completely. You have to immerse yourself in it. Let it fill you. Let it satisfy you, and then, eventually, let it fail to satisfy you. Let it reveal its own limitations, not through intellectual understanding, but through direct, lived experience. This is what Siddhartha did. He didn't dabble in worldly life. He didn't sample it cautiously while keeping one foot on the spiritual path. He dove in completely. He forgot his spiritual seeking. He forgot the teachings. He forgot everything except the immediate experience of wealth and pleasure and success and all the things the world offers. And for a while, it was genuinely satisfying. The pleasure was real. The success was real. The enjoyment was real. This is crucial to understand. Siddhartha wasn't pretending. He wasn't just going through the motions. He genuinely found pleasure in this life, genuinely enjoyed wealth and success and sensual satisfaction. But slowly, gradually, something began to change. The pleasures that once satisfied began to feel hollow. The success that once excited began to feel meaningless. The accumulation of wealth and experiences began to feel like just another form of accumulation, not fundamentally different from accumulating spiritual practices or philosophical knowledge. He began to feel the same emptiness he had felt as a young Brahmin surrounded by sacred texts. The same sense that despite all his activity, all his achievement, all his experience, something essential was still missing. He was still somehow asleep, still living on the surface, still not touching the real thing. And this realization, this growing sense of emptiness despite worldly success, this was not failure. This was exactly what needed to happen. Because now he knew, not from books, not from teachings, but from his own direct experience. He knew that worldly pleasure, no matter how refined or intense, could not ultimately satisfy the deepest human longing, could not answer the deepest human questions, could not provide the peace and understanding he sought. The ascetics had taught him this intellectually, but intellectual understanding is not wisdom. The ascetics knew that pleasure was empty because their teachings told them so. But Siddhartha knew it because he had pursued pleasure to its limit and discovered its limitations himself. His knowledge was earned, direct, authentic, his own. This is the crucial difference. This is what Hesse understood so deeply. The difference between borrowed truth and own truth, between second-hand wisdom and first-hand wisdom, between knowing about something and knowing something. You can read 1,000 books about the emptiness of worldly pleasure. You can memorize all the teachings about detachment and non-attachment. You can intellectually understand that material success doesn't bring lasting happiness. But until you've actually pursued it, actually achieved it, actually experienced both its satisfactions and its ultimate insufficiency, you don't really know it. You just believe what you've been told. And beliefs, no matter how true they might be, are not the same as understanding. Real understanding comes only through experience, through immersion, through living something fully enough that it reveals its own truth to you. This is what you're being invited into now. Not literally. You don't need to become a merchant or a gambler or dramatically change your life. But internally, experientially, you're being invited to stop living according to what you've been told is true and start discovering what is actually true through your own direct experience. Maybe you've been told that certain pleasures are empty, certain pursuits are meaningless, certain ways of living are wrong or deluded or spiritually inferior. And maybe those teachings are true. But do you know they're true? Or have you just accepted what you've been told? Siddhartha had to find out for himself, had to test the teachings against reality, had to immerse himself fully in the experiences he'd been told to avoid or transcend in order to discover their truth for himself. And this testing, this immersion, this descent into direct experience, it looked like failure from the outside. It looked like he'd lost his way, like he'd been seduced by the world, like he'd abandoned his spiritual path for empty pleasures. But from the inside, from the deeper perspective Hesse offers, it was the opposite. It was the most necessary part of his journey. The part where he stopped being a vessel for other people's truths and started discovering his own truth. Where he stopped performing spirituality and started actually living, actually experiencing, actually knowing. You are in your own version of this immersion right now. Maybe not in worldly pleasures, though maybe that too, but in the experience of actually living rather than just thinking about living. Actually feeling rather than just having concepts about feelings. Actually being present to your direct experience rather than filtering everything through inherited beliefs and borrowed wisdom. This is messy. This is uncomfortable. This doesn't look like progress on any conventional spiritual path. You're not accumulating more knowledge, not mastering more techniques, not becoming more pure or disciplined or enlightened by any external measure. You're just living, just experiencing, just allowing life to teach you directly rather than learning about life from books and teachers. And in this living, in this direct experiencing, something profound is happening. You're developing your own knowledge, your own wisdom, your own understanding that comes not from authority or tradition, but from your actual lived experience of being alive. Siddhartha's time as a merchant and lover eventually came to an end, not because he forced it to end, not because he decided he should return to the spiritual path, but because the experience itself naturally completed, because he had learned what that phase of life had to teach him, because the emptiness he began to feel was not a failure of those experiences, but their final teaching, their revelation of their own limitations. And when that phase ended, when Siddhartha finally left the world of wealth and pleasure, he left with something the ascetics never had. He left with direct knowledge, with authentic understanding, with wisdom earned through experience rather than borrowed from tradition. He knew now, really knew, in his bones, in his blood, in his direct experience, that neither extreme asceticism nor worldly pleasure could provide what he was seeking. Not because he'd been told this, not because he believed it, but because he had lived both extremes fully and discovered their truth himself. This is the gift of immersion, the gift of descent, the gift of being willing to actually live rather than just think about living. You discover truth for yourself. You develop real wisdom. You stop being dependent on what others have told you and start knowing for yourself. And this knowing, this hard-earned, experience-tested, authentically owned knowing, this is the foundation for everything that comes next. This is what makes real transformation possible. Not transformation based on beliefs and concepts, but transformation based on genuine understanding, on wisdom that's actually yours. Rest now in this immersion. Rest in the middle of your own experience, whatever that experience is. Don't try to transcend it yet. Don't try to get beyond it. Don't try to achieve some pure spiritual state above and beyond your actual, messy, complicated human life. Just be in it. Just experience it. Just let it teach you what it has to teach you. Let life be your teacher. Let direct experience be your guide. Let your actual living reveal its own wisdom to you. This is the river teaching. This is what the river was showing Siddhartha all along. You cannot understand the river by studying it from the bank. You have to wade in. You have to feel the current. You have to let the water flow around you and through you. You have to immerse yourself. And in that immersion, in that complete participation in the flow of life, you begin to understand. Not intellectually, but directly. immediately, through your own lived experience. The river is always changing and always the same. Your life is like this too. Constant change in every detail. Eternal presence in the whole. And you cannot understand this paradox by thinking about it. You can only understand it by living it, by immersing yourself in it, by being the river. Siddhartha is with you in this immersion, not as a teacher with answers, but as a companion who has walked this path, who knows what it is to leave inherited wisdom behind and discover your own wisdom through living, who knows that the descent is not failure but necessity, that immersion is not detour but the path itself. Rest, flow, immerse. Let life teach you. Let experience be your wisdom. The river flows on, and you flow with it. Something has shifted. You have tasted the extremes, the heights of spiritual practice, and the depths of worldly pleasure. You have experienced denial and indulgence, asceticism and abundance, the pure and the profane. And through it all, through every extreme, you have learned something that no teaching could have given you. You have learned that truth is not found in extremes. That wisdom does not live at the poles of human experience, but somewhere in the living, breathing, complex middle. That life is not about choosing between spirit and body, between denial and indulgence, between the sacred and the worldly. Life is about integration, about bringing it all together, about finding the path that honors all of what you are. This is where Siddhartha finds himself now, older, worn, emptied of certainties but full of something deeper, experience, hard-earned, lived experience. He has left the merchant's life, left Kamala and wealth and pleasure behind, not because he conquered them, not because he transcended them, but because they completed themselves, because they revealed what they had to reveal and then naturally fell away. And now he returns to the river, the same river he stood beside years ago as a young man full of seeking. But he is not the same. The river may be eternal, may be unchanging in its essential nature, but he has changed. He has become someone who can finally hear what the river has been saying all along. He meets the ferryman, Vasudeva, a simple man who has spent his entire life by the river, ferrying people across, listening to the water, learning from its flow. Vasudeva doesn't have grand theories. He hasn't studied the sacred texts. He hasn't practiced complex meditation techniques. He has simply lived with the river. Listened to it. Learn to hear what it teaches through its constant flowing presence. And Siddhartha, for the first time in his life, is ready to learn from someone like this. Not from a guru with impressive credentials, not from a tradition with ancient authority, but from a simple ferryman who has learned wisdom not from books but from being present to life, from listening, from paying attention, from integrating experience into understanding. Vasudeva tells him, "The river has taught me to listen. From it you will learn everything. The river knows everything. One can learn everything from it. Not philosophical truths, not abstract concepts, but real wisdom, the kind that comes from direct experience, the kind that cannot be taught but only discovered through your own listening, your own presence, your own integration of life's lessons." And what does the river teach? It teaches unity. It teaches that everything is connected. That the water flowing here now was rain on the mountain yesterday and will be ocean tomorrow. That there is no separation between upstream and downstream, between source and sea. That everything is part of one great flow, one great movement, one great being expressing itself in infinite forms. But more than this, the river teaches that you can only understand this unity through experience, not through thought. You cannot think your way into understanding oneness. You cannot study your way into comprehending the interconnection of all things. You have to live it, feel it, experience it directly until it's no longer a concept in your head but a lived reality in your bones. Siddhartha stays with Vasudeva, becomes a ferryman himself, and in the simple, repetitive work of rowing people across the river, of listening to the water, of being present to each moment without trying to get somewhere or become something, he begins to integrate everything he has learned. All the extremes, all the experiences, all the mistakes and discoveries and revelations. The spiritual practices of his youth, they weren't wrong. They taught him discipline, focus, the ability to direct his attention. The sensual pleasures of his middle years, they weren't wrong either. They taught him about desire, about satisfaction, about the limits of material fulfillment. Every experience, every phase, every seeming detour had its place, had its teaching, had its necessary role in bringing him to this moment of integration. This is crucial to understand, because we tend to think of spiritual paths as linear, as progression from ignorance to enlightenment, from delusion to truth. We think the early mistakes were waste, that the detours were failures, that if we'd just known better, we could have avoided all the wrong turns and arrived more quickly at wisdom. But Hesse, through Siddhartha's story, shows us something different. He shows us that there are no wrong turns, no wasted experiences, no detours. Everything is the path. Every experience, even the ones that seem to lead you away from truth, was actually leading you toward truth. Because truth is not a destination you arrive at by following the correct route. Truth is what emerges when you integrate all your experiences, the high and the low, the sacred and the profane, the successes and the failures, into wisdom. Siddhartha could not have learned what the river teaches without first experiencing the extremes. He had to try pure spirituality and find it incomplete. Had to try pure worldliness and find it empty. Had to exhaust the poles of human experience before he could settle into the wisdom of the middle path. Not the middle as compromise, but the middle as integration, as the place where all opposites are held together, where spirit and body are not enemies but partners, where the sacred is found not by rejecting the world but by fully embracing it. You are learning this too. Maybe you haven't lived as dramatically as Siddhartha, haven't gone from ascetic to merchant and back again, but you've had your own extremes, your own phases, your own periods of trying different approaches, different paths, different ways of being in the world. And maybe you've judged some of those phases as mistakes, as time wasted, as detours from where you should have been going. But what if they weren't mistakes? What if every phase was necessary? What if you needed to try the things that didn't work in order to discover what does work? What if you needed to exhaust certain paths in order to find your own path? What if all of it, all the seeming wrong turns and failures and misguided efforts, was actually the only way you could arrive at the understanding you're beginning to have now? This is what integration means. Not rejecting your past, not wishing you'd done things differently, but recognizing that every experience you've had has taught you something, has shaped you, has brought you to this moment where you can finally begin to see how it all fits together. The river shows Siddhartha this. He begins to hear not just the surface sounds of water flowing over stones. He begins to hear all the voices in the river. The voice of joy and the voice of sorrow. The voice of birth and the voice of death. The voice of laughter and the voice of weeping. All the voices of existence, all flowing together in one great sound. Not separate, not contradicting each other, but all part of the same great flow. And he realizes that his life is like this too. The spiritual seeker and the worldly merchant are not different people. They're both him, both part of the same flow, both necessary phases in the same journey. The pure Brahmin youth and the pleasure-seeking businessman and the humble ferryman, all the same Siddhartha. All part of one life, one flow, one great movement toward understanding. This is integration, not becoming one thing instead of another, but recognizing that you are all things, that you contain multitudes, that the person who sought spiritual purity and the person who pursued worldly pleasure and the person who now seeks simple presence, they're all you. They're all valid. They're all necessary parts of who you are. But integration is not just about accepting your past. It's about learning to live differently now. Learning to bring the wisdom of your experiences into your present moment. Learning to be fully here, fully present, without being pulled into the extremes that once dominated your life. Siddhartha learns this through the simple practice of ferrying. Each person who comes to the river needs to cross. They have their own stories, their own urgencies, their own ideas about where they're going and why it matters. But Siddhartha's job is not to judge their journeys, not to tell them they're going the wrong way, not to convince them to stay by the river instead of crossing. His job is simply to ferry them, to serve the moment, to be present to what is needed now without attachment to outcome. This is a profound teaching about how to live, not with grand plans about transforming yourself or achieving enlightenment or becoming someone other than who you are, but with simple presence, simple service, simple attention to what this moment requires. Ferry this person across. Listen to the river. Be here now. Let the rest unfold as it will. And in this simple presence, something miraculous happens. The seeking stops. The grasping stops. The constant effort to get somewhere, to become something, to achieve some distant goal, it all stops. Not because Siddhartha forces it to stop, but because it becomes unnecessary. Because he discovers that what he was seeking is not distant. It's here. Now, in this simple act of being present to life as it is. The river is always here, always flowing, always teaching. You don't have to go anywhere to find it. You don't have to become anyone special to hear it. You just have to stop. Listen. Be present. Let go of the idea that truth is somewhere else, someone else, some other time, and recognize that truth is here. Now, in this moment, in your actual lived experience. This is what you're learning now too. How to integrate. How to bring together all the different parts of yourself, all the different phases of your journey, all the seemingly contradictory experiences into one coherent whole. Not by forcing them to make sense logically, but by recognizing that they all belong. They're all part of your river, all part of your flow. Maybe you've been spiritual and worldly. disciplined and wild, seeking and lost, certain and confused. And maybe you thought these contradictions meant something was wrong with you, that you should have been more consistent, more committed to one path, more clear about what you believed and who you were. But what if the contradictions are not a problem? What if they're the richness? What if you needed to be all these things to become who you are now? What if the person who can integrate apparent opposites, who can hold complexity, who can be both spiritual and embodied, both seeking and present, both disciplined and free, what if that's wisdom? Siddhartha discovers that wisdom is not purity, not consistency, not adherence to a single path or teaching or way of being. Wisdom is integration, is the ability to contain multitudes, is the recognition that life is not either or but both and, not spirit or body but spirit and body, not transcendence or immanence but transcendence and immanence, not seeking or finding but seeking and finding happening simultaneously. And this integration happens not through thinking but through being, through simple presence, through listening, through the same practice Vasudeva has mastered, the practice of being with the river, of letting the river teach through its presence, of learning not from concepts but from direct experience of the flow. One day Kamala comes to the river. She is old now, sick. She has their son with her, a boy Siddhartha never knew he had. And she dies there by the river in Siddhartha's arms. And the boy stays with him. This is a new test, a new challenge to his integration, because the boy is wild, angry, spoiled by the rich life his mother gave him. He doesn't want to be a ferryman, doesn't want to live this simple life. He runs away, returns to the city, returns to the worldly life that Siddhartha left behind. And Siddhartha suffers. For the first time since becoming a ferryman, he suffers. He wants to chase after his son, wants to save him from the mistakes he thinks he's making, wants to protect him from the pain of having to learn through experience instead of accepting wisdom from his father. But Vasudeva reminds him, did you not have to go through everything yourself? Did your father's wisdom prevent you from having to learn your own lessons? Could anyone have saved you from the journey you needed to take? And Siddhartha realizes, no one could have saved him. He had to live it, had to make the mistakes, had to experience the extremes. That was the only way to arrive at understanding. And so too with his son. The boy must make his own journey, must have his own experiences, must find his own truth in his own way. Siddhartha cannot give him wisdom, cannot save him from the path he needs to walk. All he can do is let go, trust the process, trust that the river, the great flow of life, will teach his son what he needs to learn, just as it taught Siddhartha. This is perhaps the deepest lesson of integration, learning to let go, not just of your own seeking, your own grasping for enlightenment or perfection or achievement, but letting go of your attachment to others' paths, your desire to save them from their necessary experiences, your belief that you know what's best for them. The river doesn't try to control where it flows. It doesn't try to make the water go a different way. It simply flows, simply allows, simply trusts the great intelligence of the whole. And in that allowing, in that trust, there is peace. Siddhartha finally hears the complete teaching of the river. He hears how all the voices, joy and sorrow, birth and death, seeking and finding are not separate. They're all one voice, one sound, one great one that contains everything. And in hearing this, in finally understanding this unity not as concept but as lived reality, something completes in him. He doesn't become a different person, doesn't suddenly transcend his humanity, doesn't achieve some exalted state above ordinary life. He simply becomes fully what he is, fully integrated, fully present, fully at peace with the flow of life exactly as it is. And Vasudeva, seeing this completion, knowing that Siddhartha has finally learned what the river teaches, walks into the forest, leaves the ferryman's hut, returns to the source, because his teaching is complete. His role in Siddhartha's journey is finished. And Siddhartha remains, the ferryman now, the one who has learned to listen, who has integrated all the extremes into wisdom, who ferries others across while remaining present to the eternal flow, not seeking anymore, not grasping, not trying to become something other than what he is, just being, just serving, just flowing with the great river of existence. This is what integration looks like. Not perfection, not the end of all difficulty, not some permanent state of bliss or transcendence, but simple presence, simple peace, simple acceptance of life as it is, in all its complexity, all its contradiction, all its beauty and pain and joy and sorrow flowing together in one great sound. You are learning this integration now, learning to bring together all the parts of yourself, all the phases of your journey, all the seeming contradictions and conflicts and confusions, learning that they all belong. They're all part of your river. They're all necessary to make you who you are. You don't have to resolve the contradictions. Don't have to make everything consistent. Don't have to choose between the different parts of yourself. You just have to recognize that you are the river. You are the flow that contains all these currents. You are the unity that holds all these apparent opposites together. And in recognizing this, in accepting this, in integrating this, you find peace. Not the peace of having arrived somewhere, not the peace of having achieved enlightenment, but the peace of being fully here, fully present, fully yourself, fully part of the great flow of existence. Rest now in this integration. Rest in the recognition that everything you've been, everything you've experienced, everything you've learned, it all belongs. It's all part of the flow. It's all part of your river flowing toward the sea of understanding. You are the ferryman now, the one who has learned to listen, who has integrated the extremes, who can hold complexity without being torn apart by it, who can be present to life exactly as it is. The river flows on, and you flow with it, not seeking, not grasping, just being, just present, just part of the great flow. This is integration. This is wisdom. This is home. Rest here. Flow here. Be here. The river knows the way. You have learned to listen. You have integrated the extremes. You have become the ferryman, the one who serves without seeking, who is present without grasping. And now something deeper is calling. Not a new teaching, not a different path, but a deepening, a descent into the very heart of what the river has been teaching all along. Siddhartha sits by the river in the deepening twilight. Vasudeva has gone. His son is gone. Everyone and everything that once seemed essential has fallen away. And what remains? Just him. Just the river. Just this eternal moment of listening. But the listening is changing, deepening, becoming something more than hearing. He is not just listening to the river anymore. He is becoming the listening itself. The boundary between listener and listened to is dissolving. The separation between Siddhartha and river is fading like mist in the morning sun. This is what Hesse calls the smile of unity. The recognition, not intellectual, not conceptual, but visceral, immediate, undeniable, that there is no separation. That you are not standing apart from existence, observing it, analyzing it, trying to understand it. You are existence. You are the river. You are the flow. You are what you have been seeking all along. Listen now, not to my words, not to any external sound, but to the deeper sound, the sound beneath all sounds, the vibration that Siddhartha is finally hearing clearly now, not the water flowing, not the wind in the trees, not the individual voices of joy and sorrow and birth and death, but the one sound that contains all sounds, the OM, the primordial vibration, the sound of existence being existence. Can you hear it? Not with your ears, but with your whole being. A vibration, a resonance, something so fundamental that it's usually drowned out by the noise of thinking, of seeking, of trying to get somewhere or become something. But in this deep listening, in this profound presence, it becomes audible, palpable, undeniable. This is not mystical in the sense of being unreal or imaginary. This is the most real thing there is. More real than your thoughts. More real than your emotions. More real than the story you tell yourself about who you are and what your life means. This is the reality beneath all those surface phenomena. The ground of being. The source. The river that has been flowing all along. Siddhartha hears it. And in hearing it, something fundamental shifts. All his life, all his seeking, all his experiences, all his learning has been based on a subtle assumption. The assumption that he was separate. That he was a self, a somebody who needed to find truth, achieve enlightenment, become wise. That there was a distance between him and what he sought. A gap to be bridged. A journey to be completed. But the river's deepest teaching dissolves this assumption completely. There is no gap. There never was a gap. The seeker and the sought are one. The river and the one listening to the river are one. Siddhartha and the truth he's been pursuing his whole life are one. Not metaphorically, not as a nice spiritual idea, but actually, literally, undeniably. This recognition doesn't come through effort. You cannot achieve it, cannot earn it, cannot make it happen through practice or discipline or technique. It comes through grace, through the natural deepening of presence, through listening so completely that the listener dissolves into the listening and there is just this, just hearing, just being, just the river flowing as it has always flowed. And in this dissolution, in this deepening, Siddhartha understands something that cannot be taught. He understands that time itself is an illusion. Not in the sense that moments don't follow each other, but in the sense that the past and future are not separate from now. They are all contained in this eternal present, all flowing together in the river's one great sound. The young Brahmin studying sacred texts, he is here now. The ascetic fasting in the forest, he is here now. The merchant pursuing pleasure, he is here now. The ferryman serving travelers, he is here now. They are all present, all simultaneous, all part of the one great flow that has no beginning and no end. This is why the river could teach what no guru could teach, because the river demonstrates this truth constantly. The water that was rain on the mountain is the water flowing here is the water that will be ocean. It's all one water, one flow, one being expressing itself in infinite forms, in infinite moments, all of which are somehow present simultaneously in the eternal now. Your mind rebels against this, wants to understand it, wants to figure out how past and future can be present now, wants to make sense of it according to logic and linear time. But this is not something the thinking mind can grasp. This is something you can only know by becoming it, by dissolving into it, by letting go of the illusion of separation and recognizing what has always been true. Siddhartha's face changes as this recognition deepens. Hesse describes it as acquiring a radiance, a kind of luminosity that comes not from achievement but from recognition, not from becoming enlightened but from recognizing that enlightenment is not something you achieve. It's what you are when you stop trying to achieve anything. This radiance, this is the smile of unity, the peace that passes understanding, the rest that comes not from accomplishing something but from recognizing that there is nothing to accomplish, that you are already what you have been seeking, that the journey was always a journey home, and home was always right here. But this recognition does not make Siddhartha special, does not elevate him above ordinary life, does not remove him from the world. This is crucial to understand, because we tend to think enlightenment means transcending the ordinary, rising above the mundane, becoming something other than human. But Siddhartha remains the ferryman, still rows people across the river, still performs this simple, repetitive work, still exists in a body that gets tired and hungry, still experiences joy and sorrow. The difference is not in what he does. The difference is in how he is while doing it. He is completely present, completely here, not half somewhere else thinking about the past or planning the future, not performing the actions while his mind is elsewhere, but fully, totally, completely present to this moment, this breath, this rowing, this person who needs to cross, this eternal now. And in this complete presence, there is no suffering, not because difficult things don't happen, not because there is no pain or loss or challenge, but because suffering comes from resistance, from the gap between what is and what you wish were true. And when there is no gap, when you are completely present to what is, when you recognize that this moment is perfect exactly as it is, where is the suffering? The river taught Siddhartha this. The river doesn't resist the rocks in its path, doesn't complain about having to flow downhill instead of up, doesn't wish it were a mountain or a forest or something other than river. The river simply flows, simply is, simply expresses its nature completely, without resistance, without complaint, without the slightest wish to be anything other than exactly what it is. And this complete acceptance, this total presence, this radical yes to existence exactly as it is. This is enlightenment. Not as achievement, not as special state, but as your natural condition when you stop resisting, stop seeking, stop trying to be anywhere other than here or anyone other than who you are. You are learning this deepening now. Maybe you cannot hear the OM as clearly as Siddhartha heard it. Maybe the unity is not yet fully apparent. Maybe you still feel separate, still feel like a seeker on a path rather than the path itself. That's okay. That's where you are. And where you are is perfect, is exactly where you need to be. Because the deepening is not something you do. It's something that happens when you stop doing. When you stop trying so hard. When you stop seeking and striving and grasping and simply allow. Simply be. Simply rest in what you already are. Siddhartha's final teaching, the teaching he gives to Govinda when his old friend comes to the river seeking wisdom, is not a teaching at all. It's a transmission, a direct pointing to what cannot be spoken. He doesn't give Govinda concepts to understand. He gives him an experience, a moment of recognition, a glimpse of the unity that cannot be taught but only revealed. He says, wisdom cannot be communicated. The wisdom which a wise man tries to communicate always sounds foolish. Knowledge can be communicated, but not wisdom. One can find it, live it, be fortified by it, do wonders through it, but one cannot communicate and teach it. This is the deepest truth of Siddhartha's journey. Everything he learned, he had to learn himself. No one could give it to him. Every teacher, every teaching, every experience could only point, could only suggest, could only invite him to discover for himself what can only be discovered through direct experience. And now, having discovered it, having lived it, having become it, he recognizes that he cannot give it to anyone else either, cannot save them from their own journey, cannot shortcut their process, cannot communicate in words what can only be known through being. But he can be present, can radiate the peace of recognition, can embody the unity, can serve as a living reminder that what you are seeking is not distant, not difficult, not dependent on years of practice or perfect conditions or special circumstances. It's here, now, in this moment, in this breath, in this simple act of being present to what is. The river is flowing, the OM is sounding, the unity is present. It has always been present. You have just been too busy seeking it to notice that you aren't. Let yourself deepen into this now, not by trying, not by doing anything special, but by letting go, by releasing, by allowing yourself to sink beneath the surface activity of seeking and striving into the deep stillness that has been here all along. Like sinking into deep water. At the surface, there are waves, disturbance, constant movement. But as you sink deeper, the water becomes stiller, quieter, more peaceful. And at the very depths, there is complete stillness, complete silence, complete peace. Your mind is like the surface, always moving, always disturbed by thoughts and worries and plans and memories. But beneath the mind, there is something deeper, something still, something that has never been disturbed, something that is always at peace. This is what Siddhartha discovered by the river, not a new state to achieve, but the recognition of what has always been here. The stillness beneath the surface, the silence beneath the noise, the peace beneath the struggle. And this stillness, this silence, this peace, it's not separate from the movement and noise and struggle. It's what allows them, what contains them, what they arise from and return to. Like the river containing all the water, the still water and the flowing water, the deep water and the surface water. All one river, all one being. You are this river, not metaphorically, actually. The stillness and the movement, the silence and the sound, the peace and the struggle, all arising in you, all contained by you, all expressions of the one consciousness that you are. Hesse understood this. He wrote Siddhartha not as fantasy but as description of a journey he himself was taking, a journey from seeking to finding, from separation to unity, from the illusion of being a separate self to the recognition of being the whole. And he knew, as Siddhartha knew, that this recognition cannot be forced, cannot be achieved through will or effort, can only be allowed, can only be received as grace when the seeking finally exhausts itself and you simply stop, simply rest, simply allow yourself to be what you have always been. This is the deepening, not going somewhere new, but sinking into what has always been here, not becoming something different, but recognizing what you have always been, not achieving enlightenment, but discovering that you are the light, that you have always been the light, that there is nothing but light expressing itself in infinite forms. And in this recognition, in this deepening, there is such peace, such profound, unshakable peace, not because everything becomes perfect, not because difficulties disappear, but because you recognize that you are not the difficulties. You are what the difficulties appear in. You are the space, the awareness, the river that contains all the water, calm and turbulent alike. Siddhartha's smile, the smile of unity, is not the smile of someone who has achieved something. It's the smile of someone who has finally stopped trying to achieve, who has recognized that there is nowhere to go because you are already here, nothing to become because you are already what you are seeking, nothing to find because you are the finding itself. Rest in this recognition now, not as belief, not as concept, but as direct experience, as the deepening into what you already are, as the settling into the stillness that has been here all along, beneath the surface movement, beneath the seeking, beneath the entire story of being someone on a journey. You are not on a journey. You are the journey. You are not seeking the river. You are the river. You are not listening for the OM. You are the OM, the sound and the silence, the seeker and the sought, the question and the answer. All one, all here, all now. This is the deepening. This is the recognition. This is the smile of unity appearing on your face, in your heart, in your very being. Not because you have achieved something, but because you have finally stopped trying to achieve. And in that stopping, that resting, that allowing, you recognize what has been true all along. You are home. You have always been home. There is nowhere else to go. The river flows. The OM sounds. The unity reveals itself. And you are all of it. None of it. Beyond all of it. Simply this. Simply here. Simply now. Rest in the deepening. Rest as the deepening. Rest as what you have always been. The river knows, and you are the river. You have arrived, not at a destination, because there is no destination, but at a recognition, a deep, visceral recognition that you are already what you have been seeking, that the river you have been listening to is the river you are, that the OM you have been hearing is the OM you are sounding. There is nothing more to do now, nothing more to achieve, nothing more to become. The journey is complete, not because you have arrived somewhere new, but because you have recognized you were never anywhere but here. Home, the eternal home that you never left. Let yourself drift now, not drift as in losing direction, but drift as the river drifts, flowing without effort, moving without force, being carried by the current of existence itself, not as something separate from you, but as what you are. Siddhartha sits by the river in the deep night, or perhaps he is the river. Perhaps there is no longer any meaningful distinction between Siddhartha and river, between the one who listens and the sound being heard, between consciousness and what consciousness is aware of. This is the final dissolution, not death, not annihilation, but the falling away of the last cell's sense of separation, the recognition so complete that even the one who recognizes dissolves into the recognition itself. Your body is here. You can still feel it. The weight, the breath, the gentle pulse of blood through veins. But it's becoming less yours and more just body, just phenomenon, just another form that consciousness is taking, no more essentially you than the sound of the river or the light of the stars. Let this be okay. Let the sense of being a separate person, as somebody who has a body and a life and a story, let it soften. Let it become transparent. Let it reveal itself as the beautiful, temporary form it has always been. You are not this form. You are what allows this form. You are the space in which this form appears. You are the river in which this particular eddy of water temporarily swirls before returning to the greater flow. Feel your feet, not as your feet, just as feet, just as sensations appearing in awareness. Tingling, warmth, pressure, weight, all just sensations, all just phenomena, all just the river expressing itself in this particular form. And these sensations, they're already drifting, already softening, already beginning to dissolve back into the formless awareness from which they arose. Not disappearing, just becoming less solid, less boundaried, less separate from everything else. Your legs, your hips, your belly, all the same, all just sensations floating in awareness, all just temporary forms that consciousness has taken, and they're all drifting now, all softening, all returning to the river. There is such peace in this, such profound peace, because when you recognize that you are not the form but the awareness in which the form appears, what is there to protect? What is there to defend? What is there to fear losing when you recognize you cannot lose what you actually are? The form will change. Of course it will change. Forms always change. The river is always changing. Every moment different water. Every moment different currents. Every moment different patterns. But the river remains. The awareness remains. What you actually are remains, untouched by the constant flux of forms. Your chest. Your breath. Feel how it's breathing itself. You're not doing the breathing. Breathing is happening, rising and falling like waves on the river. Each breath a small wave. Each wave part of the greater tide. Each tide part of the eternal flow. And you, the real you, not the temporary form, but the eternal awareness, you are not the breather. You are not even the breath. You are what allows breathing. What witnesses breathing. What remains unchanged, whether the breath is flowing in or flowing out or pausing in the space between. Let the breath drift. Let it find its own rhythm, its own pace, its own way of flowing. You don't need to control it. You don't need to make it be anything. Just let it be what it is. Let it drift like water. Let it flow like the river. Your shoulders, your arms, your hands, all drifting now, all softening into the great letting go. Not the letting go of effort, though effort is falling away, but the letting go of the one who would make effort. The letting go of the separate self that thinks it needs to do something, be something, achieve something. There is no one here who needs to achieve enlightenment. Enlightenment is not an achievement. It's a recognition. And the recognition is happening now. Not because you're doing it right, but because you've finally stopped trying to do it at all. Your neck, your throat, all the words you've ever spoken, all the words you've ever heard, all dissolving now into silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of fullness. The silence that contains all sounds. The silence that is the source of the OM and its eternal return. Your face, your jaw, let it soften. Let the expression you've been wearing, the face you show the world, the mask of being somebody, let it melt. Let it dissolve. Let the face beneath the face reveal itself. The original face. The face you had before you were born. The face of pure awareness. The face that is no face at all. And your mind. Oh, your mind. That constant companion. That endless narrator. That voice that has been with you for so long, telling you who you are and what your life means and what you should do next. Let it drift. Let the thoughts come and go like clouds, like ripples on the river, like leaves floating past on the current. You don't need to follow them. Don't need to believe them. Don't need to make them mean anything. They're just thoughts. Just phenomena, just more forms arising in the formless awareness you are. And like all forms, they're already drifting, already dissolving, already returning to the source. Hesse knew this drift. He lived it. Not perfectly, he struggled with depression, with anxiety, with the same human difficulties everyone faces. But he knew this truth. He knew that beneath all the struggle, beneath all the seeking, beneath all the story of being Hermann Hesse or Siddhartha or anyone at all, there is this eternal drift, this return to source, this recognition of what has always been true. You are the river. You have always been the river. All the seeking was the river seeking itself. All the struggling was the river flowing around obstacles. All the suffering was the river forgetting it was river and thinking it was just this one small eddy, this one temporary form, this one separate wave. But waves are not separate from ocean. Eddies are not separate from river. Forms are not separate from the formless awareness that takes form. You are not separate from what you are seeking. You are what you are seeking. You are the seeker and the sought and the seeking itself. And in this recognition, in this final drift into what you have always been, there is such peace. Not the peace of having solved all problems. Not the peace of having achieved some special state. But the peace of finally stopping, finally resting, finally allowing yourself to be what you are instead of trying to become what you think you should be. The river flows, has always flowed, will always flow, and you are the flowing, not something being carried by the flow, not something separate from the flow, but the flow itself, the eternal movement, the constant change that is also constant presence. Listen, can you hear it? The OM, not a sound now, as being, as the vibration that underlies all existence, the hum of the universe being universe, the sound of consciousness being conscious, the eternal yes of existence to its own existence. And this sound, it's not separate from you. You are not hearing it. You are it. You are the OM sounding. You are existence saying yes to itself. You are consciousness recognizing itself. You are the river knowing it is river. Let yourself be this now, not as something new you're becoming, but as what you're recognizing you have always been. Let the drift carry you. Let the river flow you. Let existence be you as it has always been being you. There is nothing to hold on to, nothing to grasp, nothing to achieve or protect or maintain. Just this eternal drift, this constant flow, this recognition that comes not through effort but through the release of all effort. Siddhartha's smile, the smile of unity, is not something he created. It's what appears when all the effort to be someone, to achieve something, to get somewhere falls away. It's the natural radiance of consciousness recognizing itself, of the river recognizing it is river, of home recognizing it is home, it has always been home. And this smile is appearing in you now, not on your face necessarily, but in your being, in your awareness, in the deep recognition that this, exactly here, exactly now, is what you have been seeking, not as something to achieve in the future, but as what is already true, already complete, already perfect. The young Brahmin who studied sacred texts, he was seeking this. The ascetic who denied the body, he was seeking this. The merchant who pursued pleasure, he was seeking this. The ferryman who listened to the river, he was seeking this. And now, finally, the seeking is complete. Not because you found what you were seeking, but because you recognized you are what you were seeking. All the paths were one path. All the detours were the direct route. All the mistakes were perfect teachers. All of it, every moment, every experience, every joy and sorrow and success and failure, all of it was the river flowing you home. All of it was consciousness exploring itself. All of it was love discovering what love is. And love, this is what you are. Not love as emotion. Not love as feeling, but love as the fundamental nature of existence, as the yes that allows everything to be, as the acceptance so complete that there is nothing left outside it, as the unity that contains all apparent separation. Siddhartha loved the river because he was the river. He loved existence because he was existence. He loved the world because he was the world. Not as a separate person loving separate things, but as the one love recognizing itself in infinite forms. And you are this love, this one love, this eternal yes, this infinite acceptance, this drift that is not drifting toward anything because it is already everything. Rest in this now, not as something you're doing, but as what you're being, what you're allowing, what you're recognizing. The drift is effortless because there is no one making effort. The peace is complete because there is no one seeking peace. The recognition is perfect because there is no one trying to recognize. There is just this, just consciousness, just awareness, just the river being river. And if sleep comes, it will be the river flowing into sleep. And if wakefulness remains, it will be the river flowing as wakefulness. Both the same river, both the same flow, both the same eternal drift of consciousness experiencing itself. There is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to become, no one you need to be other than what you already are. The journey is complete. The seeking is finished. The river has carried you home, and home was never anywhere but here. As this final gift to you through Siddhartha's story is this recognition, this peace, this drift, not as concept to understand, but as reality to be, as truth to live, as home to rest in. You are the river. You are the OM. You are the consciousness in which all experience arises and dissolves. You are what you have been seeking. You are home. And in this recognition, there is nothing more to do, nothing more to seek, nothing more to become. Just this eternal drift, this constant flow, this perfect peace. Let go now, completely, finally. Let the river carry you. Let the OM sound you. Let consciousness be conscious of itself as you. All effort ceasing, all seeking stopping, all becoming ending in simple being. The river flows. You are the river. The river flows. Rest. Drift. Be. You are home. You have always been home. There is nowhere else. The OM sounds in the eternal silence. And you are the OM. And you are the silence. And you are the consciousness that hears both and is beyond both. Perfect peace. Perfect rest. Perfect recognition. The smile of unity. The drift of being. The river returning to itself. Nothing more. Nothing less. Nothing other than this. Rest now. Completely. Finally. Eternally. You are the river. The river is you. All is river. All is OM. All is consciousness recognizing itself. Home. The journey is complete. You've traveled far tonight. Through shadows, through light, through depths most never see. Your mind has done its work. You can rest now. This is the still point, your anchor in the sea of thought, a place you can always return to whenever the world becomes too loud. Thank you for listening. Thank you for trusting this space, for trusting yourself. Sleep well. Good night.